My name is Jacob, and you're watching my show about literature, and only literature. Today, we are going to talk about post-colonial criticism and how it affects the reader's view of Kim. Now, as much as I love this novel and enjoyed reading every thrilling page, I have to stop myself for a moment and be realistic about the subject matter. Kim was written at a time when the British Empire controlled roughly a quarter of the world's population by the process of creating and maintaining colonies, India being one of them. The detrimental effect of the British colonization of India was immeasurable. An untold sum of its language and culture was either lost to or hybridized with the pervasiveness of British culture and language. To this day, the people of India must deal with the fact that a purely Indian society does not exist, and are forced to sift through an amalgamized cultural identity to rediscover their true heritage. This constant struggle against the legacy of the oppressor is, in fact, the central conflict of colonization. It is the imposition of a foreign entity on the native populace, and the native people struggle to resist or expel the colonizers and maintain their sovereignty and cultural identity. Based on this observation, Kim is best viewed as Rudyard Kipling's struggle to come to terms with Britain's role as the oppressor of India and his love for the country and its people. Despite the fact that he identifies with India, it cannot be denied that he is very much part of the colonizer's culture. This division of interests reveals itself in a peculiar manner in the novel. While it is obvious that Kipling is attempting to portray the native residents and country of India with great care and authenticity, he makes no attempt to speak against its colonization. Instead, it is more accurate to say that he maintains the status quo. Take, for example, the part in Chapter 3 where Kim encounters the village elder who was a soldier during the Sepoy Rebellion. Kipling relates to us that as a result of his loyalty, the government had given him a good holding in the village, and though the demands of his sons, now gray-bearded officers on their own account, had impoverished him, he was still a person of consequence. English officials, deputy commissioners even, turned aside from the main road to visit him. And on those occasions, he dressed himself in the uniform of ancient days and stood up like a ramrod. Clearly, he was honored for his valor, but to what end? His participation on the British side of the uprising, which included 19 pitched battles and 64 skirmishes, only earned him 9 wounds, a handful of medals, one of which was called the Order of British India of all things, and a small holding, and the continued dominance of Britain over India. This depiction is insulting on a number of levels, though Kipling writes it with the best of intentions. I would say it's on the level of someone being called a credit to their race. The intended impression that Kipling wished to convey was that Indians were a heroic people. Unfortunately, he also conveys that only those who were loyal to the British Empire can be seen as such. The contrasting depiction of the Sepoy rebels, or as they would more likely describe themselves, Sepoy freedom fighters, is less than agreeable. These are people who fought to liberate themselves from an empire who subjugated nations for profit and power, and they are cast as the villains. As for the reason why they rebelled, the loyal soldier suggests that the gods, who sent it for a plague, alone know. A madness ate into all the army. Well, if the madness he speaks of was a sense of injustice against a regime that proved itself to be culturally ignorant and dominated every facet of Indian society, then yes, the Sepoys were possessed by such a madness. Then there is the account of how they chose to kill the Sahib's wives and children, which I have found no evidence to support. In fact, if anyone watching this video would like to provide any tangible evidence of this act, I would be more than happy to amend my statements. And while I would never condone the killing of non-combatants during war, I find this depiction of wanton violence written solely for the purpose of discrediting the motives of the Sepoys. There is a very strong indication that the loyal soldier had succumbed to the doctrine of Eurocentrism. For all intents and purposes, this man should be revolted by that a foreign power is taking over his country. But instead he reveres his oppressors. He even takes to mimicking them by putting on his old uniform and adopting a rigid posture that suits a British soldier. Even in his old age, he rises stiffly and salutes when Kim imitates the voice of Colonel Creighton. We see that there is a clear disconnect between what Kipling wants to write and what his subconscious writes for him. He clearly adores India and wants to present it in the best light, but comes across as condescending and Eurocentric. There are moments, however, when he does succeed in making a point about the ridiculousness of Eurocentrism, despite his innate prejudice. In Chapter 7, we see Father Victor send Kim off to school with this impeccable blessing. "They'll make a man of you, O'Hara, at St. Xavier's. A white man, and I hope a good one." If that isn't racist, I don't know what is. Clearly, Kipling is trying to make a point that Europeans don't understand that they aren't the center of the world, and that the people of other nations can be just as respectable on their own terms and by their own definition. The hit and miss of Kipling's narrative is surprising and understanding at the same time. He is aware of the injustice of colonization and unaware of the effects of his British upbringing that reinforce a sense of cultural superiority that reveals itself in his writings. I know it sounds crazy, but it's kind of like Kipling is sitting at the non-douchebag table saying, "Man, those guys over there are jerks." But no one wants to tell him to get up and leave because they know he's trying so hard to change. Hope you enjoyed watching this episode. If you like what you see, feel free to like and subscribe. And hey, if you want to make a comment about post-colonial theory and Kim, feel free to post a comment below. Stay tuned for the next episode as we talk about the element of religion in Kim. Peace!